Thank you guys for listening to that. How's it going, everybody? Good morning. Welcome to Ellensburg, Washington, USA. Hang on, Patrick. Are we functional this morning? Before I move that laptop to a different location, are we doing okay? Can you hear me? Can you see me? And where are you viewing from? Nick Zentner in the hizzy. Glasgow, UK. It's 5 by 5. That's wonderful. Carrollton, Texas. Sierra Nevada, Batholith. Bergen, Norway. That sounds like a wonderful place to be today. Half Moon Bay, California. Hello, Emily, too. Yakima, Washington. Moneta, Virginia. Vinman's Bakery. Walsey, UK. New Mexico. Canyon Lake, Texas. New Zealand, I think I saw. Glad everything's okay there. You've got power there in New Zealand, do you? Good. Los Gatos, California. Northern BC. Yeah, we are going to BC today. I promised yesterday, but I didn't get there, obviously. Today we're going to BC. Pahrump, Nevada. Hungary, hello. Selah, Washington. I didn't even say what time it was, did I? Okay. So the local time is 9:49 in the morning, and we will begin our program on Exotic Terranes Part 2 at the top of the hour, about 10 minutes from now or so. So it does seem like we're doing well there. That's great. So the mic is working. Good. Give me another second and we can chat for a bit. We have a Mason sighting. We got Emily. We got both Emilys. We got Christina. We got the Vowel Boys, and we got Bryce the Interloper. What more do we need? What more do we need? I can close this live stream. I don't need that anymore. These guys know that I talk to myself when I'm trying to get set up. So that's what's happening right now. I don't know what that's about, but it just helps me concentrate, I guess. So yes, Mason, Friday at 5, today at 5, deadline. Okay. Hi to a few more. And then I might have a story or two before we begin this morning. More hellos and more checking in from where you are located. I'm sorry I missed it before. Susan's in Warden, Washington. Grandpa Carl's in the Granger Clay Pits. Dan's in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Falls Church, Virginia. From the verge of Sun Valley, Idaho. London. Hello, Bob. Little Rock, Arkansas. Ottawa, Canada. I'm feeling fine. Thanks for asking. Yeah, I've got my second dose of the vaccine yesterday afternoon and doing just fine. Thank you. Greece brought an apple for the teacher. That's nice. East Massachusetts, Austin, Texas, Rockport, Massachusetts. Townie Jeff's in the house. Yeah, man. Good to see you again, Jeff. Odense, Denmark. There's Eve. She doesn't have math on Friday mornings. Right. What's going on with the Arkansas? I got a lot of Arkansas people here. All right. Scheiden, the Netherlands. I think I saw that correctly. Hello. Boy, we got 3 Noralee videos per week now. Noralee just posted something at 6 this morning, and she's on the road. South Africa. Just wonderful. And Ashley Lockwood has just scheduled a Zoom meeting with me. Well, I'll see you at noon, Ashley. Torrance, California. Hello. Rathdrum, Idaho. Abu Dhabi. Helpma 26. I've heard of Abu Dhabi, but I'm not really sure where it is. Can you help me, please? Can somebody help me? I don't know where that is. I don't even want to guess. Well, I'll guess. Bryce wonders, is it the Emirates? Saudi Arabia? Somewhere in that area? The United Arab Emirates.
It's actually the capital.
Mason says, actually, it's the capital.
That's not like an actually.
You said it exactly like that, and I'm just parroting you right now. Good Lord. Mason showed up at 9:15. It's just been me and him for like a half an hour. Yeah, I'm glad that we had our bonding moments already. So great, Abu Dhabi. So you're not blocked in Abu Dhabi? Like I was real interested. Remember the folks from Tehran that connected by Instagram, but some folks here thought maybe you couldn't get on YouTube if you're in certain countries. I never even thought of that, and I wonder if that's true. Anyway, I'm sure Mason has a thought there too, but you're no. Okay. Aberdeen, Scotland, hello. A few others. Yeah, this is we're in the home stretch. I think I've mentioned that to you a couple times before. So there's only 3 lectures left after today. Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday of next week, we'll round out this series of Geology 101 live streams. And I'm currently in negotiations, and I'm losing for Geology 351. Geology 351 is my spring quarter class, and I have 20 students enrolled, geology majors. I always enjoy teaching it. It's a field class. So it meets Tuesdays at 1 o'clock for a 1-hour lecture in this room. And then Thursdays, we jump in the vans and we go out from 1 o'clock until sunset every Thursday. And we apply scientific papers to the field with a theme. But they're not letting me use the vans. And I've come up with all sorts of crazy plans, and they're not budging. I think they think we're going to the ice cream factory or something. If I say we're going on a field trip, So my message to you is, I think it's official. I am going to live stream Geology 351. So in other words, the last time I'll see you with the live stream is next Thursday. What is that? March 11th. So Thursday, March 11th will be our last 101 live stream. And then I'm not going to see you live for a couple of weeks. But I will see you for Geology 351. If you're interested, same YouTube channel, the whole bit. Tuesday, March 30th, the last Tuesday of March. Later this month, not that far away, at 1 p.m. It'll be a similar length, 1 to 1:50 p.m. Pacific time, Geology 351. And that's all I know. Will it just be Tuesdays at 1? Or will it be more than that? I don't know. Still trying to work on it. Okay. And I don't think I need your ideas or your advice. I thank you, but I know what I want to do, and I know who I'm trying to deal with, but it ain't working. I thought I'd get the green light at this point. So anyway, that's a little programming note. We got more people. We have no chatter, 0 chatter. So I'm going to go talk to the students. Okay. We're functional, and a similar looking outline, but some key differences. Okay, thanks for joining us this morning. My God, it is a church in here today. All right, Emily too. I'm coming at you.
Oh boy. Hope I'm awake enough for conversation today.
How was the drive down today?
Pretty boring.
Are you a music listener, podcast listener, stone silence? What do you do when you're driving?
Music.
Music, yeah, good.
Yeah, I like to sing very loudly.
Oh
and
wow,
People usually judge me as they're driving by, but I'm all right with that.
that's nice.
Yeah.
So you don't even really try to muzzle it or pretend you're doing something else. You're just like sing at the top of your lungs, and they zoom by you.
Yeah.
Cool, I like it. You're still a first year student. Hey, would you guys talk to each other? This is a private conversation. All right, do something. Vowel boys talk about shit. I don't know, the weather. Have you registered for next quarter?
I am kind of
Mhm.
registering.
Okay.
I went to register last night, and then I realized I had a hold because of
The weather's very
the
atmospheric
financial aid
today, right?
Okay.
agreement.
Okay.
But I'm probably gonna register tonight.
Okay.
Yeah. I am a first year student, but
Mhm.
I do have credits from running start the last couple years.
Okay. Okay.
So I think I'm sophomore level.
Yeah.
Probably.
Well, if it's not a financial hold, I can lift the advising hold if it's an advising hold. So, I mean, we could go down to my office after class if you wanted, or come back next week or whatever. You let me know if you need help that way. But I don't know. You thinking you might do any more geology, or you're definitely going a different direction?
I don't know.
Mhm.
I want to do get a teaching degree, but I'm
Okay.
not sure if I want to do elementary teaching or STEM teaching.
Okay.
Because the only part of STEM I really like is the science part.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
always forget about the others.
Right. Well, hang on. Well, we do have a special advisor for earth science specialization and the teaching program and STEM and all that. And so there's grant opportunities. There's all sorts of things going on. So if you wanted to really kind of be bold about the next step, I'd connect you with Ann pretty soon. Yeah. So send me an email if you want, and I can make that happen.
All right.
Mason's dying to talk to you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Yeah, Tim's here. JC's here.
Yeah.
Christina's not interested in these. JC, have you had any?
I
no,
go like agate hunting with my dad.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, so
Oh,
I got
this is
stuff
nothing.
at home that's like, yeah. Yeah, I'm like, they didn't do a good job.
Right.
Because you're supposed to put like other rocks in there with it
Yeah.
to make sure because the white bits on there is just the polish.
Oh boy, well, that person
Stuck in
might
the
be
crack.
listening now, so we should cut this part close. I get the,
Well, there's a tip for them because I have tons of rocks that are like that, but
Yeah.
it's like I don't know what it is. It's like some sort of flat
Yeah.
rock that
Yeah.
you break in shards.
Right.
That you mix in there.
Yeah.
It's,
Oh, your dad knows what he's doing then, huh? Or did you pick that up and teach your dad about it?
No, we like met this rock lady.
Oh, we've all met a rock lady in our lives. Yes. Oh, that's a riot. Okay. I'd like to learn more about the rock lady, but I got to get rolling here. Hey. Nice and quiet. You don't hear heavy machinery here, right? That's the attraction, Jeff. Oh, Casey's here. Yeah, man. Oh, we got Kieran. All right. Okay. So we've got some energy in the room. That's a good thing. I will try to build on that. Bryce. All right. So I've got a couple of quick announcements. I want to try to get right into this. And I also have a little bit of background for you to help you see why this is such a chaotic part of this class. Okay, first message. If you're in my lab, there's a deadline today at 5 p.m. I've only gotten a few field trip reports by email from people. And I know now it's fashionable to wait until the last 5 minutes, and then everybody's sending at 4:50, 8.5. Like, I don't understand that. You've had 2 weeks to do it, but anyway. So please remember to do that. I'm not a deadline extender kind of a guy. And there might be some confusion since some of you were not attending my physical lab, but you're still officially in my lab. So look for that email. If you know what I'm talking about, you got this afternoon to wrap it up. Please, let's get that lab thing figured out and done by 5 p.m. today. Second message is this is our last class of the week. This is the last Friday that we will have a lecture because next Friday we're doing our final exam, as I announced yesterday, and I talked about the details of that final exam yesterday. So go back and see that live stream if you haven't heard what's going on with the lab. With the final exam for this lecture. But a week from today will be our last gathering, and then we're done with the class after the final exam next Friday. Okay, so a familiar looking outline, the word accretion is here. The word accretion is saying that these two dates are accretion dates. And we had all this stuff. I didn't even erase it. We had this stuff yesterday, but I didn't get to it. So why am I so frickin' all over the place? And are we going to do that same kind of weird, kind of meandering kind of discussion today? Well, kind of. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. It's fun for me, but it's more than just about me. This is a part of the class that I have completely blown up and I'm redoing in real time with you. I used to talk about the Rocky Mountains for a full lecture, and that is gone. I've stopped talking about the Rocky Mountains in this class because of all this stuff that I have learned since last March. And I know that we all had experiences abruptly changed for us. In my case, I had all sorts of public talks and public field trips and everything I had all ready to go. And then in a matter of like 3 days in mid-March of last year, everything vaporized and I was staring at like months of an empty calendar. And for me, that is not a good feeling. So I immediately said, I got to do something. I just can't stop and just kind of, fucking make wood duck decoys or something. I got to do something. So I had just purchased an iPhone. I taught myself how to live stream on YouTube, and I started doing live streams from my backyard. You saw that Milankovitch one, but I got into all this food prop thing, and it was a whole deal. And all last spring and early summer, I was doing 5 live streams a week. But I burned up all my usual stuff in those 75 live streams. I didn't learn anything new, really, except the technology part of it. But I had a whole new approach on how to make it work with hokey stuff from home involving the cat and everything else. Well, that turned out to be such a positive experience that I kept going. And I decided I wanted to learn new stuff about exotic terranes. So I don't know if you've ever gone on my YouTube channel and gone backwards in time and looked at this summer, for instance, but there are 25. I rarely talk about my other projects with you, but I think it's important here to give you context for this. So there's 25 Nick on the Fly episodes, they're called, where I was going out and hiking to exotic terrain locations, reading scientific papers and like filming the rock and everything else. So there's a bunch of stuff on my YouTube channel that corresponds to today's topic, for instance. And that was in preparation for last fall, where I did an exotic terrain live stream series from A to Z. So there were 26 of those episodes. And that's before Christmas now. This is going up until mid-December. So I'm now, for you guys, I'm going, like this morning, I'm like eating my Cocoa Crisps and I'm like watching the Rangelia live stream that I did in late November or whatever. Like, what? What do I do? And I'm starting to take notes. So I'm basically in today and next time, Monday, I'm going to try to take some of the sexiest stuff from those live stream series on exotic terrains and deliver them in kind of a chalkboard fashion as opposed to the other things I was doing. That's why this is so funked up. Now, that's the adjustment on your part, but I hope the trade-off is it's brand new stuff that I'm very excited about, and I'm hoping to continue that excitement with you. Okay, I want to start, therefore, talking about something that I barely talked about in the live stream series. I want to try a couple things with you. Oceanic plateaus. Silesia was an oceanic plateau, so we've already been introduced to the concept, but I've got a diagram and a couple other things for you. Then I'm going to go up to British Columbia with you today, the province of British Columbia. and looking at the insular superterrane, which accreted 100 million years ago, and before that, the intermontane superterrane, which accreted 170 million years ago. I knew none of this last August. So it's pretty fresh, and it's staying in this class because of the good stuff. Hopefully by the end of today, or maybe very much at the beginning of Monday, we'll be in the North Cascades of Washington, and we will be looking at Mount Stewart and other places north, and then blow your minds with one new set of ideas called Baja, BC. Okay, that's the plan for today and Monday. And just since I had the energy is real good actually this morning, so just to finish out the class, on Tuesday and Thursday of next week, our last two lectures in this series, we'll come back to this local area and look at Liberty Gold. There's a mining town called Liberty, and there's an active gold mine up there with a friend of mine who's mining gold. And on Thursday, there is an Ellensburg blue agate lecture. Some of you know about blue agates that are famous here in the valley. So we'll finish locally, but we're going to be wild and woolly here today. Enough of the introduction. Let's go. Get rid of the outline, he says. That's going away. We finished in the last few minutes of yesterday talking about this major event. I need you now, okay? I need you. There was a time when Australia was connected to North America at this suture point, at this fat yellow line running through the Pacific Northwest. When did Australia start to rift away? How many years ago did Australia start to rift away from North America? 750 million years. Thank you very much for that. So to set the stage for today, that's our first job. And it's only going to take 3 minutes. It's going to take 33 seconds. Ready? 1001, 1002, 1003. It's gone. So starting 750 million years ago, we get Australia broken away from us, and we just start sending it to the other side of the Pacific Ocean, and it's still over there. Okay? So we've created open ocean. This is an important point, I think, because we're going to be doing all sorts of stuff and building the state of Washington. And if you're not really thinking about it, you're like, well, I thought Australia was there. No, Australia was here, but 750 million years ago, it's gone. Let me give you some things to write down. I think we want to be, I don't want to be too all over the place today. Probably will, but I don't want to be too crazy about it. As recently as 200 million years ago, so you just told me 750 million years ago, we're going to create open ocean. We're going to get Australia to leave us. And we flash forward all the way to 200 million years ago, and we still don't have Washington. There's a little town that I'm going to put right on this beach. Again, this is open ocean for hundreds of millions of years for sure. I don't know if anybody's heard of a little town called Kettle Falls. Kettle Falls, Washington. It's in the upper right-hand corner of Washington. Has anybody been to it? You got to kind of, Jeff's been up there. Yeah, so a couple, maybe I have. Right. So the Columbia River is coming out of Canada, and it crosses the border, and the Columbia River has a falls, and that's why it's called Kettle Falls. And then, of course, the Columbia comes down close to us at Vantage. Kettle Falls is one town for us as a landmark. What's Kettle Falls? Everything east of Kettle Falls is North American craton. Oh boy, there's a blast from the past. The craton, do you remember way back in the earliest part of our class? The craton is the old Precambrian, very thick, solid, substantial foundation of North America. And we introduced, I won't ask for it because it was so long ago, but laying on top of the craton were a bunch of sedimentary layers called the platform. And those were Paleozoic and Mesozoic. And you have a sketch early in your notes from this class of the craton and then those layers of platform. And then do you remember we brainstormed together like 3 ways that Mother Nature exposes the craton, that metamorphic rock, and we had the Grand Canyon, we had the Rocky Mountains uplifting, that sort of thing, right? Well, that's not the entire continent. The entire continent of North America does not have a craton basement. We, Washington, Oregon, California, there is no craton. There is no very thick Precambrian basement. Why? Because this was all open ocean until about 200 million years ago. So I kind of lied to you. I didn't mean to. I didn't get into it at the time. We were just trying to learn basic things. But the craton does not extend all the way to the west coast of North America, even though I maybe drew it that way back then. The craton abruptly stops here. Kettle Falls was at this long-lived beach. Now, everything, I'm just going to cartoonishly do this, and we'll be a little bit more careful in just a bit. But just to expand the thought then, if we did not have a craton basement, do we have a basement at all? And the answer is yes. We have a basement, but our basement, our foundation, at the deepest parts of the continental crust here on this side of the line, is a composite or a combination of a bunch of scraps of land. Each of them is a terrane. We were using bumblebees yesterday. I don't know what we'll use today. But the idea is there's an exotic origin to many of these pieces of land, and therefore our foundation is an amalgamation of all these individual pieces. Some that traveled a hell of a long way to get here and accrete. Are we good so far? Remember, one last thing. For each terrane that we talk about today and tomorrow, there's two separate dates. Does anybody remember that? What am I about to say? What are the two separate dates that we need to commit to memory for each terrane? Why are we talking about two different dates for a terrane? Emily, too.
One of them is the date that it was created.
Yes?
The other one was the date it was accreted.
Yes. That's it. Emily, too, is correct. For each of these pieces of land, you're going to get confused if you're not very careful with these numbers today. But we've got an exotic terrane, and we have one number, or maybe a range of numbers, for the creation of it, and another number, or a range of numbers, for the accretion. Just as an example, we've only talked about one terrane so far, Silesia. What are the two sets of numbers? Anybody got it handy? We made Silesia from when to when, JC? 56 to 48, and we accreted Silesia, JC? 51 to 49. Beautifully done. Got it? Okay. So this business of bringing in terranes, I used to teach just happening one at a time. I would actually, in the early days, I would literally do this. I'd call them suspect terranes. I'm like, yeah, we know that every one of those terranes is not from North America. I put a question mark on every one, and I taught, this is back in the day, not that long ago, actually 5 years ago, I suppose. I'd say they came in one at a time. Bring them in one at a time, and plaster them on to the leading edge of North America until we build the Pacific Northwest one piece at a time. Well, that ain't right. And you see on your outline that you have, but I don't have in front of you anymore, there's something called a super terrane. And it's just like it sounds. Mason, are you done with the yawning now? We good? You're not? Let's do a couple more together. Okay, we're done now. Okay, good. That's it. A bunch of these terranes, we now have evidence, came in as a unit. A couple of these terranes, 3, 4 of these terranes would gather, would hook up, in the young parlance, would hook up out in the ocean, and then they would come in as a super terrane. What are the names of the two super terranes we're going to learn today? I say insular, the insular superterrane and the intermontane superterrane. So It's organization time coming, I promise, in just a second, but I think it's important to set this up properly. There will be some names, there will be some dates, but we need to organize them so that we know individual terranes might be part of something bigger, a super terrane. Okay, let's stop screwing around, let's do it. So the concept I need is Oceanic Plateau, because there's more Oceanic Plateau concepts coming for this class. And I wanted to do this carefully, so I'm going to hold this for both camera lenses, and I'm going to hold it here for a little while because I think I'd like you to draw this, if you can, in your notes. Okay? So we introduced Silesia as an Oceanic Plateau, much, much larger than a shield volcano like Hawaii, much, much larger than Iceland. Much, much larger than any basaltic island that we've discussed so far. And this Oceanic Plateau business is new to me as well. I'm just starting to grasp the scale of these Oceanic Plateaus. I'm just starting to grasp why they exist today and what evidence we have they used to exist out in the Pacific as well, but are no longer out in the Pacific. So I'm going to hold this for a little bit longer to give you a time to look. But what I'm drawing for you is the Ontong Java Plateau. That is probably the most famous Oceanic Plateau today, although I don't really know. I'm just starting to learn. There's another Oceanic Plateau called the Caribbean Oceanic Plateau. There's a bunch of different names. We're not going to list them all. But I picked this Ontong Java Plateau, which is in the South Pacific, on the other side of the Pacific from us, and also south of the equator, because look at these frickin' dimensions, man. On a map, this Oceanic Plateau is the size of Alaska. The acreage is the size of Alaska. I didn't bother with the numbers there. No, I can't picture these huge numbers. It's not an island. There's, on average, 7,000 feet of water submerging the Oceanic Plateau. And I don't think there's any evidence it was ever an island. Mason?
Is it called the Ontong Java Plateau because it originated from like Sumatra and Java, or?
Beats me. It's down there. I don't know why they chose that name. Look at the thickness of this pile of basalt. I had to read it like 4 times. Is that really right? 20 miles thick? You remember our Columbia River basalt pile was 3 miles thick beneath the Tri-Cities of Washington. We were pretty damn impressed with that. 20 miles thick, built off of the ocean floor. And I don't really know if it's a tabletop like this, but they're calling them plateaus, so I'm guessing they are. Flat-ish. And I'm giving you a volume number there, 5 million cubic kilometers. I don't know. That doesn't really mean much to most of us. But I'm bothering you with it now because some of the exotic terranes in British Columbia were originally like this picture. And they're no longer out in the ocean. Where are they? They're frickin' British Columbia. More than one. And I promise to get to it. Tim, you got something?
I'm kind of curious about ocean depths around the plateau.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, all the stats are there, like how deep is the water there, that sort of thing. I don't have it. I'm sure you can find it pretty easily. The only other thing I want to do here is that I'm very curious about why these things exist. That's the obvious question, isn't it? And they're not near a plate boundary, typically, these oceanic plateaus that we have currently. And the thought is we're talking about mantle plumes again. Tim.
Okay, now I do have to look at
Yeah, go.
Do we have anything on the date and age of that basalt?
With the exotic terrains today in British Columbia, yes. This one I can't remember.
Okay.
But it's a lot of basalt in a short amount of time. All this basalt is coming out and erupting in just a few million years, which is crazy fast eruption rate. So I have a lot of learning to do. Are we talking about hotspots with each of these? Is there a whole chain of these? I don't know. I think I even read that this thing, as huge as it is, there's 2 other oceanic plateaus nearby that perhaps were all part of one super plateau. Like, what the hell is going on? Okay, well, that's, I think, scintillating for many reasons, including just this bathymetric thing. Everything's like been hidden underwater for a long time, and now we find these things and they're so huge. And then we add the fact that there's a mantle plume story potentially, and then we add the fact that British Columbia is full of this stuff. So I'm not going to show you that on the outline again. You've got it, but I'm going to assume you've got it. And I want to now build British Columbia in a very organized way. So those that are not into the spitballing, this is nice and organized now, I think. For the next, I don't know, I can't promise, 15 minutes, I'll try to stay on task, okay? And we are going to build British Columbia, and I'm going to use the notes from the kitchen table this morning, okay? Great lecture, great lecture. Okay, good. So let's get over here, and first of all, give yourself a lot of room on this. We're going to build British Columbia. Actually, I need to do one thing before I do that. I've showed you Mapping McMap yesterday for the first time, which is the main map that I started coloring. Each live stream, we picked a new color and we just started building because I was learning show to show. I didn't know what was coming next, basically. And I first of all want you to notice that I never did color Washington and Oregon. Why not? Well, there's the Columbia River basalts that are sitting on top of the exotic terranes. So here we are in 2021, and nobody has a clue. Nobody has any sort of guess as to what colors, therefore what exotic terrains are beneath Ellensburg, are beneath Tri-Cities, are beneath all these areas that are white. We have no good evidence because there's so much young stuff sitting on top of it. So my frustration, part of my excuse, I guess, for why I don't know all this exotic terrain until last year is because I kept trying to go look at Washington now. It's in the North Cascades. The North Cascades, we do have exposure. We go to that mysterious mountain range to most of you, the Stewart Range, and from the Stewart Range all the way up to the Yukon is exotic terrains at the surface. But south of Mount Stewart, you hardly have any exotic terrains at the surface. And so part of my problem was trying to learn all this exotic terrain stuff by starting in this most complicated area. Northern Washington is so freaking complicated with these exotic terrains that are almost unrecognizable. And so I'd try for a while and I'd give up. This is, over the last 20 years. I'd try a little while, I'd give up. Too much detail, new names, everything. I can't keep it straight. So I finally realized that to really understand the basic story, I needed to cross the border and go to British Columbia, where A, the exotic terrains are pretty well exposed, even though it's rugged and mountainous generally. B, the story makes basic sense, and the size of these, look at the size of these terrains, are nice and big. And you can build from the Craton in Brown all the way out to the coast, out at the Queen Charlotte Fault, you remember. We can do that in a relatively coherent way. And that's what our plan is today. And then late today and Monday, we'll try to get back here to Washington and we'll try our best to make sense of what's there. Okay. So what I want to do then is make a cross-section of British Columbia. That's the plan. So this is a cross-section. I guess I'll keep this nearby, because I'm going to keep reminding you that this is the map and this is the cross-section of the same thing. So Craton, the brown on my map, is here, and I won't bother you with a Canadian village that's on the boundary like Kettle Falls, because I don't know one, but we won't know one. We don't know the geography up there at all. We barely know the geography here. But it's the equivalent of our Kettle Falls, okay? So let me draw and make some progress for us here. Again, I'm going to go all the way out this way. So give yourself a lot of room to draw. Let's just do it first of all. We're going to bring in the first super terrain Do I dare use a bunch of colored chalk? I don't think I'm going to. Let's do it this way. I'm going to make it a little bigger. Hang on. It's going to look exactly like this. I want to make sure I have enough room to do what I want to do. Okay. This is a super terrain made out of 3 individual exotic terranes. From our introduction, you know what I'm talking about now, right? They didn't come in one at a time. These 3 guys hooked up out in the ocean, and then they came in together. The super terrain, I only have room for the abbreviation, but you have it on the outline. Intermontane superterrane. Accreted when, according to your outline? Thank you. I'll make sure that we try to keep these dates straight. I'll put ACC each time we're talking about an accretion date. So we went from a long-lasting west coast of North America at Kettle Falls, you know what I mean? And then here comes this incredible superterrane called the Intermontane Superterrane, IMS, and it's going to dock, and it's going to be made up of 3 individual terranes. Now, I feel like I want to give you more detail than that. That's really where the power of this story comes in. And the colors that I'm choosing, that I have chosen on this Mappy McMap, I don't think it's worth you writing down necessarily, but it's a dark blue, kind of a yellow gray, and then a light blue. So this is the scale of these 3 exotic terranes in British Columbia. And if you happen to know any of these towns, if you can read them, it's a big area. So what can I tell you about each of these 3 terranes that are collectively part of the Intermontane Superterrane? Well, I can give you the names. I guess I'll do that down here. Individual terrain names. Like Siletzi was an individual terrain name. I'm giving you now some other names. This is, and these are famous names in geology. The Quinellia terrain. The Stickinia terrain. And sandwiched in between the 2 of them, the Cache Creek. I'm trying real hard to be on task today. So the energy is going to go down a little bit, but at least we're like, it's easier to follow perhaps. So just to see it here on the map, the dark blue is Quinellia. There's a town called Quesnel. Myra from Quesnel joins us every time. She's right in the heart of Quinellia. The Cache Creek is the greenish yellow, town called Cache Creek. And then Stickinia is this lighter blue here. So we're making a large portion of this province with the accretion of one event 170 million years ago. Let me give you a little bit more. Quinellia has a bunch of rocks. Oh, I was going to give you all sorts of ages. No, I'm not going to do that. Let's just do that. Both Stickinia and Quinellia have volcanic rocks and limestones that tell us that they were island arcs. So we know the word arc means a line, and we all can picture being out in the Pacific and finding a line of islands. And the kind of volcanic rocks present tell us that it was a oceanic, ocean versus ocean plate boundary. Let's be blunt about it. So both Stickinia and Quinella are a line of islands out in the Pacific Ocean, kind of like the outer Aleutians today. If you remember, and you remember your good notes, you had geographic examples today of every type of plate boundary. And you remember we finally ran out of time on that day with plate boundary types. And we said, what's an example of a convergent oceanic versus oceanic plate boundary? And we decided those islands out on the outer tip of the Aleutian Islands. That's what we want to visualize for Quinella and Stickinia. So you're like, okay, well, why didn't just this row of islands come in as Quinella and then another one come in as Stickinia, and then what the hell's Cache Creek? Cache Creek is a portion of an oceanic plateau. And the Cache Creek Oceanic Plateau has a bunch of limestones that were deposited on top of the Oceanic Plateau. You keeping up with me? I'm talking about the Cache Creek exotic terrane now, which is found between these other two guys. And most of the Oceanic Plateau of the Cache Creek is missing. Nobody knows where it is. Like, it's got to be somewhere. It's a hell of a lot of basalt. Where'd it go? Still working on that. But it's the limestone that I'm not drawing, but if you can just picture a bunch of coral reefs, we're in the South Pacific, and I'll tell you why. Because in the limestones are some fossils. And the fossils, I'm no expert, but in the Cache Creek, we're going to put a star, and star indicates far traveled. Like traveling across an ocean to get here. If you have a star, if you have an exotic terrane today that has a star or an asterisk, that means you came a long way away. And you know it came a long way away if you can find things we call Tethyan fossils. I'm going to slow down because there's a lot to absorb here. I'm also slowing down just to kind of think of how I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes with you. Please remember, we're going to accrete these terranes 170 million years ago, and so these three terranes have to be older than 170, right? They have to exist out there in the Pacific. They have to be organized into some sort of terrane party out there in the water sometime before 170, and then we're going to add them 170. You're with me? Casey's nodding away. But the trick is, how do you take an oceanic plateau from the opposite side of the Pacific Ocean, and we know it's from the opposite side of the Pacific Ocean because of these Tethyan fossils. So the reason I'm pausing is, it's tempting for us just to picture the Pacific Ocean basin. Like, let's make this the Pacific Ocean on a map. Oh, is that going to work? Let's not draw it out. You can picture a map, and we're on one side of the Pacific, and Australia's on the other side of the Pacific. We don't need to have Tim pop up again, but that's what it looks like. That's the Pacific today, right? Well, if we're talking about this time of 170 or 200, what do we know about the number 200? What was significant about that in our class? 200 million years ago is famous for what? The Pangea breakup mason. So we have a Pacific 200 million years ago, but we have a different continental geography. So you can see how this becomes mind-blowing if your mind hasn't been blown already. We've got to visualize exactly what the global geography was during this time, see what the Pacific looked like at that time, then track these terranes from God knows where, and the Tethys Ocean or the Tethys Sea is stamped on those worldwide maps from 200 million years ago. It's part of the Pangea time, is my point. But I don't think we can handle that. I can't handle that right now. All I do want to say is that the uppermost part of an oceanic plateau that's full of limestone, rich in fossils that are Tethyan, are the key to tell us that the Cache Creek crossed the Pacific Ocean to get here, couple inches a year. This is not doggy paddling. This is not some sort of boat. This is taking an oceanic plateau with a bunch of Tethyan fossils in the limestone riding on top of it and having this thing cross the frickin' ocean. How are you going to do that? Well, you need to get it onto an ocean plate and have the ocean plate come at us. Well, which one was it? Beats me. We've already gotten into that. It's very difficult, even 50 million years ago, to know exactly which ocean plates are doing what. Because most of that ocean plate material has left us. It's now in the lower mantle. So we don't want to get hung up there. But we do have good evidence that this Cache Creek Oceanic Plateau got connected with two island arcs out in the ocean. Are these two guys the same or are they different? I don't know. And then this island arc sandwich with the Cache Creek limestone in between with the exotic terrain, fossils in it, all comes in and accretes at 170 million years ago. And we gain more than half of the real estate of British Columbia, the two shades of blue and the gray yellow in the middle. Let me pause. Do you have anything? Are you curious about anything? Do you want to just get away from this and move on? Mason.
You said that they were coming in one by one and then you changed.
We should visualize an oceanic island arc, a different oceanic island arc, a huge oceanic plateau with some limestone on top. No idea how these looked at different times in the past, but good evidence that these three guys collided with each other out in the water at some point before 170 million years ago, and they definitely came in as a big super terrain as opposed to individual guys. JC.
So when Australia separated from North America,
Right?
750 million years ago.
Yep.
Obviously that was before Pangea was ever a thing.
Correct.
Does that mean that it separated and then formed back onto Pangea on a different spot, and then when it was separated, that's just when they went separate ways?
Yes, I love what you're doing. So JC is trying to visualize Pangea. We know that's between 300 and 200 million years ago. And JC's going, well, wait a minute. Back to the Australia thing. Australia was connected to us 750 million years ago. I didn't say it then, but I'll say it now since you want to go there. That was an older Pangea. That was an older supercontinent, Rodinia. And so, again, it's too much for us to reconstruct exact plate motions, but I think we can do the fact that, yes, our story starts when Australia is here, 750, we break it apart, we break apart that supercontinent. Australia is moving on some kind of ocean plates or related to some ocean plates we can't reconstruct. And then we're much closer to present day, which is like, less than 200 million years ago when we would do this thing. So I love what you're doing, but nobody has yet been able to pinpoint what you're saying or what you're asking about. Good. I've got most of you, I think. I can't really tell, but I'm going to assume the benefit of the doubt. Because by now, we've built much of British Columbia, but we're going to build the rest of British Columbia right now. And remember what the whole cell is. We're going to finish this job today and then cross the border to us on Monday and try to carry some of these thoughts and look for some of those things here, as opposed to just being up across the border, which has been locked since last March. And my whole plan was to get up to British Columbia and learn a bunch of stuff last 2 summers. Hasn't worked yet due to a bunch of reasons. Okay, what are the two colors here? Yellow and orange. Yellow and orange. So we are talking about Vancouver Island now. That's one of the exotic terrains of the insular superterrane. Yellow is, we're going all the way up to Alaska as well. Okay, so without belaboring it, let's finish our job here today. Not going to make it quite as big. Same concept. I'm going to have a super terrain. We know from your outline, it's the INS, not the IMS. This is the insular super terrain that accreted 100 million years ago. So these are two massive real estate gains as opposed to a bunch of individual things coming in one at a time. That's an outdated way of teaching. Mason, good Lord. We know the format, so let's just do it. Yellow on the map is the Alexandria, the Alexander terrain. More detail coming on that in a second. And so there's only two terrains instead of three terrains making up this insular super terrain. Alexander in yellow, I'll show you the map again in a second. And by far the most famous of all the exotic terrains, and this is really where the subdiscipline of exotic terrain study began, with Wrangellia, orange. So the two terrains that make up the insular super terrain are the Alexander terrain and the Wrangellia terrain. Who gives a shit? Well, let me give you more example, more detail about why this is so powerful and how much detail we do have now. So first of all, let me just get the lenses set up to see that orange is Wrangellia. I'll do it in order. By the way, we have phrases called inboard and outboard. So just a way to describe these terrains. So where are you in this exotic terrain map? Are you out here at the edge or are you inland quite a ways? And so casually we talk about the inboard terrains and the outboard terrain. So I'll put it to use. The intermontane superterrain is inboard of the insular superterrain. See what I'm doing? So we're bringing these in, and the inboard terrains arrive before the outboard terrains. Okay, fine. So let me do it in order just within the insular superterrain. Inboard is the yellow, the Alexander terrain, and I've got a little bit of that in Washington. I've got some coming up, kind of the interior seaway. If you're old and you like eating 5 meals a day, you take your cruise ship up to Southeast Alaska. I just offended everybody watching at home. And then orange is the Wrangellia story that's not only Vancouver Island and a little bit of mainland BC, but it's what used to be called the Queen Charlotte Island is now called Haida Gwaii. And then up in Alaska as well, up by Anchorage. You're like, okay, whatever, I don't know. What am I supposed to write down? Well, how about this? There is, in the Alexander terrain, red sandstone and metamorphic gneiss that is distinctly continental. Like if you haven't picked up on it so far our exotic terrains have had pretty much an ocean story to tell. And we'll see then when we get to Washington on Monday, we'll be looking at some deep ocean rocks. Ingalls Lake on that hike up to Stewart. Those are ocean rocks. So many of these exotic terrains have an ocean story, and that's cool. But I get particularly fired up when we've got the Alexander terrain, for instance, which has sandstones that look very red and very familiar to other places in the world, and metamorphic gneiss. You remember the banded black and white zebra stripe looking metamorphic rock. I'll cut to the chase. These sandstones and gneisses of the Alexander terrain, again in yellow, have been sampled so carefully and studied so carefully that we have now found a match. We have found a place in the world where those same red sandstone and metamorphic gneisses existed. And the answer is Northern Europe, Scotland, Norway. I'm saying that the Alexander terrain came directly from Europe, as opposed to the Cache Creek terrain, which came directly from Indonesia. I don't know how your geography is, but those are both long distance travelers coming from different places on the globe. And you're like, wait a minute, how are you supposed to get something that's now in British Columbia? How are you supposed to get it here from Europe? And again, my first thought is, well, we got to picture what the continental globe looks like, what the global continental arrangement is during this time between 170 and 100 million years, because we're going to dock both of these guys at 100 million years ago. But the answer is it's all been worked out. The Alexander terrain came through the Arctic, came between North America and Russia, and swung again. We're using that globe as our reference, and again, that map looks different back at this time, but just to say Arctic hopefully works for you in general. I mean, this is wild stuff, and data that's come in just in the last 10 years or so. Really exciting scientific papers. So I hope that you're with me. We have the old red sandstone, it's called, a very famous place where James Hutton did his first work on unconformities in Scotland, and gneiss coming from Europe. This stuff, the Alexander, gets into the Pacific and hooks up with Wrangellia. Oh, okay, what's Wrangellia? Another one. Another one. There's a lot going on in the Wrangellia terrain, but the most well-known part of the story with Wrangellia is an Oceanic Plateau. And I think I do want to give you the dates and the age and the name for, dates and age, same thing, for the Oceanic Plateau rock for Wrangellia. So within Wrangellia terrain, which is part of the insular superterrane, I think my eyes would glaze over about now. There's too many. This is the way most science classes are taught, I guess, right? And you just have all these names to write down and dates and things like that. This is a rare day for us that way. But I feel like I do want to give you some of these details to just show you the power of these individual stories that these rocks are telling. So I am now talking about a little bit of detail within the Wrangellia terrain that's part of the insular superterrane that accreted both of these guys, hooked up together out in the water, and added and finished the job of building British Columbia 100 million years ago. The name of the basalt, I mainly just like to say it. The name of the basalt making up the large igneous province, or the Oceanic Plateau that we now know as Wrangellia, is the Carmoutzen basalt. And I got to go to my notes if I can find them to figure out the dates we have for the Carmoutzen basalt. To, in other words, have the specific age for the Oceanic Plateau that now is, yep, I got it. That was close. The Carmoutzen basalt on Vancouver Island, part of the Wrangellia terrain, is a hell of a lot of basalt that erupted on the ocean floor as an oceanic plateau between 230 and 225 million years ago. And it's now exposed a large portion of Vancouver Island. So where in the Pacific was it? Hard to say. Was it a mantle plume that made this? Probably. Which mantle plume? Is it a mantle plume we still have today? Beats me. There's a lot of cool storylines to follow through on this. But just to step back for the last, I'm already over time. Sorry, give me 30 seconds, would you? Just to step back, it's one thing to say everything's exotic, but I don't think that's a powerful way to teach this. You can decide if this is powerful or not. But I think getting down to individual terrains, individual rocks, individual ages, individual fossils, individual continents of source, and then having it all arrive here, it's just a bunch of immigrants arriving at our shores and unpacking and saying, I'm not leaving. Or maybe I will leave at some point if the tectonics change and we start actually having a divergent plate boundary here, like Baja California and Mexico, where Saber is. That's a part of North America that's on its way away from us. So eventually this stuff will go. But we've been receiving gifts. We've been receiving exotic terrains over the last 200 million years, and we've gained some of our most favorite states and provinces in the North American continent. Thank you. I love you. I hope you felt it was worthwhile coming today. Have a good weekend. Our last exotic terrain session will be Monday. Looking forward to it. I'll have a plan by then. I'll be with you all in a couple of minutes and do some live Q&A if you want to hang around. We got 1,060 people. All right. Okay. Bryce, totally different, totally new, or maybe not. Some of that was similar. Yeah. Okay, good. Hey, man. Casey.
Zach said that all 3 of our field trip labs were due next Friday.
Good. If that's his plan, go with that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Because I was wondering if you guys had different dates or what's going on with that.
I think he probably decided to do something different. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Go run with that.
I only got your email, so I put mine with Aiden's in the
They're in my drawer.
the drawer.
Good. Yeah, that works too. Thank you. I didn't even think to look there. Maybe everybody's is there. I don't know. Thank you.
Ours were the only ones.
Okay.
Aiden
All right.
just said that's where he was put.
All right, Isaac. Thanks. Are you dancing right now, Jordan? Oh, yeah. You got a pep in your step this morning. You love exotic terrains.
I have a question. Okay,
Yeah.
so what is this craton? I didn't know what it was when I was drawing the diagram.
Okay. Is this the whole quarter's worth of notes? Is this the whole class?
Mhm.
Yeah, let's look back quick. Can I take your notebook here? You got all the central gear on. My God. Is it? Are you an athlete? Are you part of the? No.
No.
You just somebody bought you all? Are you
My
parents?
dad got me these
Oh,
photos
cool.
right here.
Nice. It looks like official gear, like you're about to go on an airplane somewhere, travel with a team. Do you remember? Oh, look at all these colors. See, here we go. So this whole thing where we had the metamorphic old Precambrian rock that was kind of the foundation of everything, and then we had all those layers covering it of limestone, and then we came up with 3 ways to expose the craton, and so I showed some pictures of that metamorphic rock. That's the craton we're talking about.
Okay.
And the only difference is I just here showed the craton going all the way to the coast, but I played a little trick on you, I guess.
Thank
You're welcome. Mason?
Just going to say, I was watching a documentary for marine biology there,
Oh, look at
and
you.
they were actually focused over on the Sierra Nevadas, and we were
Okay.
just talking about those being one of the big 3 back when California was active.
Totally.
And that's just my sister.
Nice.
But yeah, I don't know why I thought to take a picture and tell you about it, because it seems like, I don't know, you hear about something in class and then all of a sudden you notice it everywhere. And
Exactly.
was one of
That's
those
what this is supposed to be about. Yeah, I'm supposed to introduce a few concepts and then they intersect with your life more than just in the classroom. Well, Pedro, this is a big moment.
I think I
Got it
got it
all?
all.
Yep.
Yeah,
Looks
'cause I
good.
know you mentioned not to
Yep. Yep.
do any of that.
Yep.
So.
I will grade this, post your scores. Thank you, man. All right. Okay, you're the first to arrive and the last to leave, Mason.
Not first to arrive, but I'm normally the last to leave.
Today, I'm just reporting the facts. Today, you were the first to arrive and the last to leave. Okay.
And I know it's a side effect of medication. It makes me drowsy.
Oh, God. All
I
right.
still enjoy what you're teaching.
Thank you. All right, we'll see you. Okay, let's do some live Q&A. Thanks for sticking around. We still have 1,000 of you. Uppercase, of course, and I'll try my best to answer a few. There's a lot you could ask about today. Bill, would it be easier to think of North American plate moving also, not just the accretions? Thank you, Bill. I'm fighting 30 years of teaching here, where I've always had a moving Farallon plate coming at North America and subducting beneath and just having this conveyor belt bringing all these terranes. And for reasons that I learned with the audience in the live stream before Christmas, I realized that there's not great evidence for that anymore. So there's a big shift in thinking about how these terranes arrived. And especially in the case of the insular and maybe some others, there's good evidence now that they were fixed, that they were not moving, and that North America is plowing into, so the thing moving is North America, not the ocean plate. So I'm caught in the middle right now, figuring out how best to teach that. And I think I was thinking about this morning. I don't know about the Chrysler driving down the road and insects splattering, because these kids don't know what the Midwest is like in August. I need some analogy. Maybe somebody has an idea. I need something big, like a tank or a Jeep, or I don't know. That's like military, but something moving that's thick and sturdy. I need it to hit something like a moose, or I don't know what. But the moose, let's just say a tank and a moose. So the moose isn't moving. It's grazing. I don't know what. The moose is great. What? Does it move? I need this. Like if the terrain is fixed, if it's an oceanic plateau that's anchored on a mantle plume, let's say, and we know it's not moving, and then we have a continent coming in, and we're going to accrete, but the thing that I really think will seal the deal is to then continue and have that moose splattered onto the front grill, and the whole thing moves. So now we got the terrain moving with this bigger Jeep. Am I communicating at all? A totally different way that I've taught it before, but I think I'm going in that direction. Thank you, Bill. Cynthia, or Sin, were the intermontane and the insular accreted by them coming, or you're asking the same question. Okay, well, interesting. You're all asking kind of the same thing, like basically who's moving. The answer might be both, but I think I need to think more about how best to teach it. And the key is reconstructing those ocean plates and reconstructing mantle plumes and having good evidence to know, is it possible to know more detail about some of those old ocean plates? And if it is, and we know the old directions, then we can know who's moving and who's not moving and who's fixed and who's not fixed. All right. Now I've lost where I am, so I'll just hunt around here. Oh, here's a bunch. The Dave, is it possible one of our exotic terrains were someone else's exotic terrains first? For sure. I don't know if I can give you examples necessarily, but that's another thing that I guess I've given up on with this class. Maybe I shouldn't. The concept that all 7 continents have a craton in the interior and exotic terrains around the margin. And if we go back far enough in time, these continents it's just a gift exchange. It's just taking fragments of terrains and tearing them away and sending them to somebody else, glomming that on. Then if you're patient, different fragment being taken away. So yeah, you can re-gift. It's a white elephant game, or what do you call it in your country? Yeah, it's a game of white elephant. Is that the right phrase even? Re-gifting. Terry, what do they think that Silesia was stationed? Why do they think Silesia was stationary while North America moved west to accrete mantle plume stationary, but wouldn't Silesia move on the ocean plate toward? I see what you're saying, Terry. I'm kind of hung up on that too. I'm hung up on if we love a mantle plume, the mantle plume is fixed. If we have a mantle plume and a very simple, fast-moving ocean plate over the top, then I agree. We're just going to, like in Hawaii, just make a Oceanic Plateau even, and then move it off the hotspot. But what if the mantle plume is at a spreading ridge? And what if the continent is plowing over the spreading ridge? Then maybe it's more of a truly fixed thing, and we don't have a whole trail of older stuff approaching. But I'm still needing to think about that. Thanks. You guys are all kind of in the area that I'm trying to work out just from my brain how I want to do this in the future. Jim, are there ghost volcanoes in Idaho from Quinella accretion? Thank you, Jim. Interesting question. The ghost volcano is my phrase, and nobody else uses it. And the way that I use ghost volcano is that we have an active continental volcanic arc where we have subduction, like the Cascades. You remember we have these cones active for 2 million years at a time, and then we have a graveyard of these places where these old cones used to stand. To me, this is, at first glance, this is different. These are active island arc volcanoes. Oh, maybe you're asking something different. One way to answer your question is it's an active island arc, Quinella, out in the water. Once it gets splattered on, I don't visualize the volcanoes surviving. So if you think of that being a ghost volcano, I guess, but it's not quite what I was talking about with a continental arc. But then I'm realizing maybe you're asking that we were talking about yesterday about jumping the trench. You're thinking, I don't know, are you out, Jim? But I thought maybe once we accrete the intermontane, then we set up a new trench, a new subduction zone, and maybe we have a new arc coming through here. And there are some plutons that are old enough that they could work as a ghost volcano, if that's what you were meaning. And that's all part of, that's a little old, but it's a part of, those plutons are a little old for what I want to do, but the next round of programs, and the 351 class will be looking mostly between 50 and 30 million years ago, with Seletsy accretion in the aftermath of that, with the Chalice Magnus. Marbles collector, is it possible that the Alexander terrane was west of John Stockton's house 750 million years ago and then rifted away, had its history between, and then returned 100 million years ago? Yeah, I suppose it's possible. Did you follow that? So Marbles collector is wondering if since this is continental in nature, is it possible it was connected to the craton here and then rifted away? Intermontane comes in, and then 100 million years ago, Alexander comes back in. I guess it's possible, however, and I don't remember the details from that Alexander terrane show, but I think most of the work on these sandstones and gneisses and other thing with some zircon minerals, I think they ruled out North America as the origin. Like it's continental stuff, but they seem pretty convinced it was not North American, or at least west coast of North America craton. So I guess it's possible, but I guess the data, it's not favorable data as we understand it currently. Kyle, do we have dates for when Quinella, Cache Creek, and Stakina joined to each other? And when did the Alexander and Rangelia hook up? Was there a planetary singles bar? We do have dates for the hookup of these three and the hookup of these two, but I don't remember them. They're in those live streams from the last fall. There's a few plutons we call stitching plutons, where you have some blobs of underground magma that invade more than one terrane, and so they help say that if you have an age for the stitching pluton, the hookup has to be before the stitching pluton came in. I think I did that with the Alexander and Rangelia and had a date, maybe it's coming back to me now, maybe it was like 305 million years old or something as the stitching pluton. And then a bunch of live stream people correctly asked, well, if the Carmoutzen basalts were 230, Why aren't those flood basalts on both? They're just on the Rangelia. So it's probably me not totally getting the story straight, but there are some dates to document that. I just don't have them for you. And I didn't decide they were important for our group. They were into it to a point today, but it was a little too mild-mannered for them today, I think. I need to figure out how to come up with a couple interesting questions from this lecture and get them involved. You try it the first time, you can't quite see how to involve other people easily, unless you're really going crazy, which I was doing yesterday. Mr. Ahab, were you thinly referencing the 810-kilometer reflector yesterday in the plateau subducting Kamchatka? Thanks, from Rhode Island. Oh, I don't know much. The question is about there's certain discontinuities in the Earth's interior or the seismic waves traveling through the interior of the planet, they abruptly speed up or slow down or reflect at a couple of boundaries. The MOHO is what we talked about in shallow levels, but there's a couple other very famous boundaries in the subsurface, including worldwide at the 810-kilometer depth. Was I thinly referencing that? Not really, because I don't know what to do with it. Is that the boundary between the mantle and the outer core? I don't even know that. So I'm sorry, I don't know. No, I wasn't that clever. I'm rarely that clever. Could Scotese plate tectonics be of some help? Sure. Thank you, Therese. Yeah, I think the next time I do this, I'll condense this a little bit, famous last words, and then try to get some visuals going. I don't know. The next time I teach 101 will be in the fall, and we're planning on being face-to-face, and I don't think I'll be live stream. Well, I don't know. I'll be able to fire up all the screens just for the classroom. This is obviously a different arrangement for this quarter. This is fun. I'm having a good time. I'm feeling fine. Let's do a few more. Is exotic terrain regions more sensitive to faulting and rifting when exposed to subduction? Cyclical cycler. Interesting question. I don't know. I guess you're asking about is the terrain area more prone to faulting just because I'm showing it as this kind of this cobbled together thing. It's probably not that delicate, but I don't have a good geophysical background to really back that up. So possibly. Robert, are Siberia and Alaska on the same plate? The North American plate continues across the Bering Strait, as I understand it, and a portion of Siberia is on the North American plate, but I don't know details up there. Death Mall, how does the field evidence tell us that the terrains came together before accreting? It's a timing thing, I think. So you have a bunch of field evidence at these two major boundaries showing a bunch of deformation inland. So in other words, when you dock a super terrain, there's significant damage to the passive margin layers and a bunch of other sedimentary layers. Just basically the rocks of North America get screwed up pretty significantly, folded and faulted in response to the docking. So you look at the timing of that and figure out when the major docking happened. And then in a general way, because I don't have specifics for you, you look for that same kind of deformation here. And that's why some people study structural geology. They study the details of these folds and faults and use some very clever techniques to figure out when did the layers start to warp or when did the layers start to break along faults, the big hunk candy bar and the warm big hunk and the cold big hunk. So it's all not only mapping and understanding deformation in certain places, but getting the timing of the deformation. And that ultimately helps you put this chronology together. That was a Laurel and Hardy thing there. I said something and then I went, yep. What a maroon. The Tethyan fossils are exotic to me. Again, I'm just trying to get flashes. Is there a fossil called Yabina? I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. Yabina fossils are the Tethyan fossils that were used in Cache Creek. And I'm sure there's a date on those. I don't have it in my head, sorry. Chris, what's the evidence that led to the idea of super terranes instead of individual impacts? I guess what I just said, getting good structural data and figuring out when certain places in this story were traumatized. That's really what folding and faulting is. You're just traumatizing the rock because of some major event. Excellent questions today, as always, but this particularly good questions today. Oh, let's skip down to live. Why not? To do that, I have to hit the white arrow in the blue circle. Dennis, how do spreading ridges affect accretion? I don't know how to answer that. The spreading ridges, we're back to what drives plates, I guess, right? It does seem like the most fashionable way to explain plate motions today is slab pull, where you begin subduction of an ocean plate and then you get more and more of that plate into the subduction zone, and then there's enough mass that's already gone down the tubes that there's momentum for the rest of the tablecloth to fall, the rest of the tablecloth to skid off the end of the table and then drop into the hole, drop onto the floor. If that's the ultimate motor, then the spreading is just taking advantage of the tablecloths getting off of the table. And is that really driving the accretion? I don't know. I don't know. Thanks for the question. Lila, do we know how the terranes from Northern Europe formed? Was it the Mid-Atlantic Ridge or before? Yeah, so many of these questions are kind of getting at obvious questions about how you're moving these terranes. Why did you rift this away from Europe when you did? And pretty quickly you're into Never Never Land with why do supercontinents exist? Why do supercontinents break up? And before you know it, you're talking about major questions about how the interior of the Earth works and what kind of extraterrestrial stuff is happening to kickstart some of this. I think I mentioned on my podcast recently a couple of times, but I guess I'll share it here too. I'm learning that there's more reason than ever for me to learn about oceanic plateaus, a topic I've given no thought to until now. But if Soletsi is an oceanic plateau, and it was, and Rangeli was an oceanic plateau, and it was, and Cache Creek is a remnant of a much larger oceanic plateau, and apparently it was, and the Yellowstone hotspot is part of the story, and a mantle plume. I mean, these are, as I learn more and read more, this whole mantle plume thing and accretion of oceanic plateaus is like bubbling up to like the headline events for much of the Pacific Northwest geology, as I'm starting to see. And so I'm learning that I need to learn a lot about these oceanic plateaus worldwide, not only today, but what we think we know in the past. And that gets us into me trying to learn new things about mantle plumes. And again, that might get us to extraterrestrial stuff. I don't know. But, and we're even into global warming times and mass extinctions and the whole thing. It's always kind of been out there. I did a flood basalts lecture on YouTube a few years ago. I hinted at the mass extinction tie and everything, but I stick in the Northwest. I try to stay to payoffs for things locally. But here's an example, I think, of a global discussion and a global set of ideas that have direct, I'm just realizing this right now, that has specific payoff for understanding 150 million years ago as two major tectonic events here in the Northwest that apparently have a mantle plume oceanic plateau story to it. Wow, who knew? I think that's the last one. A toast to you. Here's to your health. Whether you have one vaccine in your system or two vaccines in your system or zero vaccines in your system, here's to your health. I'm feeling no effects of the second dose that I had yesterday, Pfizer. And I'm grateful for that. My wife is showing no effects either. So we appear to be free and clear. And I wasn't going to mention it, but I think I will. I watch all these replays. I see all your live comments. It's part of, I think it's part of being a public communicator of science. You need to see what people are saying and what questions they're asking. Know your audience, essentially. This is a global audience. I think I saw, and maybe you're here again today, there were some people here that are anti-vaccine people. And I'm just confused by that. Because I think you're here because you want to learn science, I guess. And I think you've been here enough to know that we rely on the data and we keep talking about evolving interpretations based on the data. Why is this health data any different than the physical science data? In other words, if you're into the science we're doing here, why is the vaccine thing like a totally different category for you? Totally confused by that. So if you're here and you're an anti-vaccine person, I'd be interested in the next couple minutes before we sign off. Why are you you're a smart person, you're thinking about science. What? I don't understand. Here's to the health of everyone in your community, and especially all those workers that have been working so hard through this whole thing, many without vaccines, many without any protection, but they're out there every day working in the hospitals and the facilities around the world, aging populations, delivery trucks, grocery stores, you name it. We all know many people like that who have been just plugging away despite the risk. So here's to them. So I think that's it for today. I appreciate you joining us. And the next time I see you will be Monday at 10 p.m. Whoa. The next time I see you will be 10 at the morning. I guess I am starting to get tired. I'll see you next time, Monday morning, the usual time. Thanks for joining us. I love you. Have a good weekend. Goodbye.